They thought silence meant weakness. They thought a single father would look away, stay quiet, and move on. But on a spring morning in Missoula, they crossed the wrong line, because the man they mocked was a former Navy SEAL, trained to read danger before it speaks. And the dog at his side was not a pet, but a promise. A promise that some boundaries are not negotiated. What followed was not violence, it was patience. It was truth surfacing after years of being buried. And it was karma arriving right on time, calm, precise, and unavoidable. This is not just a story about justice. It is about accountability, about protecting the innocent, and about how doing the right thing can change everything. Before we continue, share this story with someone who still believes justice matters. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of courage, consequence, and redemption. A spring morning in Missoula, spring had only begun to touch Missoula, Montana. Snowmelt traced thin rivers along the sidewalks, the air still sharp, sunlight cautious but present. Jack Miller pushed open the glass door of the coffee shop near the Central Park, the bell chiming once before settling into silence. At 41, he moved with the restrained economy of someone who had learned long ago not to waste motion. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his frame still solid despite the quiet wear of years. A navy winter coat hung to mid-thigh, practical and faded at the seams. Beneath it, a red and black flannel shirt, worn jeans, brown leather boots, scuffed from real use. There was a stiffness in his gait, subtle but unmistakable. His left knee never quite bent the same way as the right. A battlefield injury. One of several reminders Jack carried without complaint. His face was angular, square jaw shadowed by a neatly trimmed beard threaded with early gray at the temples. His nose had been broken once, maybe twice. Dark brown eyes rested calmly beneath a slightly furrowed brow, warm at first glance, sharp when focused. People who met him briefly often mistook his quiet for gentleness alone. Those who knew better recognized discipline beneath it. Jack was a former Navy SEAL. That part of him never truly retired. At his side walked Rex. The German Shepherd was 5 years old, fully grown and in his prime, black and tan coat, dense and well-kept, strong chest, powerful hindquarters, ears upright and alert. His amber eyes scanned the room in slow, deliberate sweeps. Rex wore a black harness, sturdy and clean, with a white patch stitched firmly across it. Service dog, do not pet. The leash hung loose in Jack's hand. Rex did not pull. He did not sniff aimlessly or seek attention. He moved when Jack moved. He stopped when Jack stopped. Years of training and trust bound them tighter than any command. Behind Jack came Emily Miller, 8 years old, small for her age, light brown hair cut just below her shoulders, always slightly uneven as if she resisted sitting still for haircuts. Her skin was pale, touched pink by the cold. Emily wore a yellow spring jacket that had once belonged to another child, and a backpack nearly too large for her narrow frame. Emily was deaf. She walked with quiet confidence, her eyes observant, her hands expressive even at rest. To Jack, her silence was not emptiness. It was simply another language the world too often refused to learn. They took a place near the window. Rex lay down immediately, positioning himself between Emily and the rest of the room without instruction. Jack removed his gloves, rubbing his hands together once, feeling the ache settle into his knuckles. He glanced at the counter, already calculating time. Emily's school bell rang in 23 minutes. The coffee shop was warm, crowded with late commuters and college students. Laughter cut through the hum of conversation. Somewhere, behind them, a group of young men entered, bringing with them the smell of damp jackets and cheap cologne. They were loud, careless. Jack noticed them the way he noticed everything, without turning his head. 4 men, early 20s, one with a shaved scalp, another with a thin mustache trying too hard to look older than he was. They leaned against the counter, voices rising, jokes sharper than necessary. Emily tugged gently at Jack's sleeve and signed to him, quick and precise. "They're staring." Jack nodded once. He did not look yet. One of the men noticed Emily's hands moving. He nudged his friend and laughed. The sound carried. A mocking imitation followed, fingers flapping clumsily in the air. Emily's shoulders tightened. Jack felt it immediately. He turned then, slowly. The man who had laughed was tall and thin, hoodie hanging loose over narrow shoulders. His expression was careless, amused in the way of someone unused to consequence. He leaned closer, invading space he did not own, mouth twisting into a grin. "What's she doing?" the man said, voice deliberately loud. "Broken or something?" Jack stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not hurry. Rex rose at the same time. The shepherd stepped forward, placing his body squarely between Emily and the man. Muscles tensed beneath his coat, his head lowered slightly, eyes locked, unblinking. No bark, no growl, just presence, just certainty. The air shifted. The man stopped smiling. He took a half step back without realizing it. His friends fell silent, suddenly aware of the size of the dog, the stillness of the man holding the leash, the weight of attention now fixed on them. Jack's voice, when he spoke, was calm. "Step away from my daughter." It was not a threat. It was information. The barista froze. Other customers turned. Someone whispered. The bell on the door chimed again as another patron entered, unaware that a line had already been drawn. Rex did not move, neither did Jack. And everyone in the room understood instinctively that whatever came next would not end well for anyone foolish enough to test that silence. The young CEO, in the thin coat, Claire Donovan, stood at the counter as if she belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. She was 32, tall and slender, with a posture that suggested long years of learning how to take up as little space as possible without appearing small. Her beige spring coat was thin, practical, clearly chosen for movement rather than warmth. Brown hair was pulled back into a neat low knot, not fashionable but efficient. Her skin was fair, unmarked, the kind that burned easily in winter sun. There was a stillness about her that did not come from shyness, but from calculation. Behind her left ear sat a hearing aid so small it vanished unless you knew where to look. Claire's hands moved in clean, precise signs as she ordered. Her fingers did not rush. Each motion was deliberate, practiced. This was not a woman new to silence. This was a woman who had lived inside it for most of her life. The barista hesitated. His confusion showed in the way his eyebrows drew together, his mouth opening as if sound alone might solve the problem. He glanced toward the line behind her, already feeling the pressure of impatience. Jack saw it from across the room. He felt the moment shift before anyone spoke. It was the same sensation he used to get on patrol, when air pressure changed just enough to warn you something was about to break. He stepped forward, Rex rising with him, their movements synchronized without thought. Jack signed calmly, translating Claire's order into words. His hands were not elegant, but they were clear. Learned the hard way. Learned for love. Claire turned, startled. For a fraction of a second, her composure cracked. Her eyes widened, dark brown and sharp, then softened as recognition set in. She answered in sign, her movements quickening slightly, relief bleeding through control. When she smiled, it was not the practiced curve of a corporate executive. It was small, genuine, and fleeting, like spring sunlight slipping through clouds. "Thank you," she signed. Jack nodded once. He did not smile back. He rarely did. Rex settled at Jack's side again, eyes never leaving the room. One of the young men from earlier watched the dog with visible discomfort, shifting his weight, suddenly interested in his phone. The coffee was made. Claire paid, then reached into her coat and pulled out a simple white card. She hesitated before offering it, as if weighing consequence against instinct. Jack took it. The name hit him like a cold wave. Claire Donovan, Chief Executive Officer, Helix Mobility Systems. For a moment, the sounds of the cafe dulled. Cups clinked, steam hissed. Jack's pulse thudded in his ears, loud and uneven. Helix, the name he had not spoken aloud in 3 years. Emily's mother had died because of Helix, not officially. Officially, it was adverse road conditions. Officially, it was driver error. But Jack had seen the data Laura left behind. He had read her notes, her warnings, the lines she underlined twice because she knew no one would listen the first time. Jack folded the card carefully and slipped it into his coat pocket. Claire watched his face closely. She was used to reading people for cues others missed, a survival skill. She saw something darken behind his eyes, something old and heavy. Recognition flickered there too, followed by restraint. She signed again, slower now. "I didn't know," she said. "Not about him. About everything." Jack met her gaze. "I know," he signed back. It was not forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. Outside, the snow melt continued to drip from the awning, water splashing against concrete in a steady rhythm. Spring pretending it was gentle. Emily tugged at Jack's sleeve. She looked between him and Claire, curious. Claire crouched down without hesitation, her coat brushing the floor. Up close, the faint scar near Claire's right temple became visible. Old, healed poorly, an injury from childhood. "You're brave," Claire signed to Emily, her expression open, unguarded. Emily smiled shyly and signed back. "My dog is scary." Claire laughed silently, shoulders lifting once. Her gaze flicked to Rex, who remained still, head lifted just enough to acknowledge her attention. Not friendly, not hostile, watchful. "Yes," Claire signed, "he is." The bell above the door rang again. 2 men in dark jackets entered, scanning the room too quickly to be casual. Jack noticed immediately. Their eyes lingered on him, on Rex, then slid away. Not drunk, not loud, something else. Claire noticed too. Her shoulders stiffened, just slightly. She stood, straightening her coat. The mask returned, smooth and professional, but Jack saw the tension beneath it. She signed, one last time. "If you ever want to talk," she said, "about Helix, about the past." Jack did not answer right away. Rex shifted his weight, nails clicking softly on tile. One of the men near the door adjusted his stance. Jack caught the movement out of the corner of his eye and angled his body subtly, placing himself between Emily and the room again. A seal's instincts did not fade. They waited. "I'll decide," Jack signed finally. Claire nodded. She did not push. She never had been allowed to push. Silence had taught her patience. She walked toward the door, thin coat no match for the cold waiting outside. As she passed the 2 men, their eyes followed her briefly, then returned to Jack. Rex stared back, unblinking. The men looked away first. Claire stepped into the spring air, unaware that something old had been stirred, something dangerous and unfinished. Jack watched the door close behind her, his reflection briefly visible in the glass. Helix had returned to his life, and this time, he would not look away. The threat was no longer just on the street. Jack Miller had learned long ago that danger rarely announced itself. It arrived quietly, disguised as coincidence, as routine, as people standing where they should not be. He had been a SEAL team leader for 12 years, not the loud kind, not the ones who chased medals. Jack led by stillness, by noticing what others missed. Laura used to say that was why she trusted him with her fears. He listened the same way he watched a perimeter, patiently, completely. Laura Miller had been a software safety engineer at Helix Mobility Systems. She was 36 when she died. Tall, slender, with dark auburn hair she never had time to style, and pale skin that freckled in the sun. She spoke softly, but her mind was sharp and relentless when it came to numbers and systems. Laura believed technology should protect people, not impress investors. 3 months before her death, she found a flaw in Helix's autonomous navigation software. A rare edge case failure triggered by spring thaw, wet asphalt, and reflected light. Vehicles misjudged stopping distance by less than a second. Less than a second was enough. She documented everything. She pushed reports up the chain. She was told she was overreacting. When she refused to let it go, her access was reduced, then reassigned, then ignored. The accident happened anyway. Jack never received an apology, only silence and legal language. Claire Donovan had not been responsible for that silence, not directly, but she had inherited a company trained to protect itself first. Jack knew that pattern well. He had seen it in war zones, seen it in boardrooms, different uniforms, same instincts. When Claire asked him to help quietly review Helix's legacy systems, Jack agreed for one reason only: truth. He worked nights after Emily slept. Code was not foreign to him. Laura had taught him enough that he could follow logic like a map. He noticed gaps, missing logs, clean deletions that didn't match organic decay. Someone had been careful, and someone was still watching. The first sign was a gray sedan parked across the street from his apartment 3 mornings in a row. No plates he recognized. Engine off. Driver never visible. The second sign was the man at the grocery store. Mid-30s, average height, brown beard trimmed too neatly for Missoula. He pretended to study cereal while tracking Jack's reflection in the freezer door. The third sign came at night. Jack and Rex walked their usual route just after 10. Spring air cool, ground damp with melting snow. Rex stayed close, shoulder brushing Jack's knee. His ears shifted constantly, reading echoes Jack could not hear. Halfway down the block, Rex slowed. Jack felt it too, the pressure, the wrongness. Footsteps behind them, too measured, matching pace. Jack did not turn. He adjusted his grip on the leash and slowed just enough to confirm it. The The steps slowed with him. Rex stopped. He pivoted smoothly. Planting his feet, body squared toward the sound. His spine straightened, tail still, head level. A working stance. A warning written in muscle and intent. The footsteps stopped. A man stood under a street lamp 20 yards back. Late 20s, hood pulled low, thin frame, hands in pockets. He had the look of someone paid to do things he did not want to explain later. Rex stared at him, not barking, not growling, waiting. Jack turned then, finally, his face calm, eyes empty of emotion. He said nothing. The man shifted, took one step backward, then another. He turned and walked away, fast but not running. Jack waited until the sound was gone. "Good," he murmured to Rex. At Helix headquarters, Claire was having her own reckoning. Sarah Langford sat across from her in the conference room, sunlight cutting across the polished table between them. Sarah was 45, tall and lean, with silver blonde hair cut just above her shoulders. Her skin was weathered by years of travel and late nights, not age. She wore no jewelry except a simple watch. Her eyes were sharp blue, observant, shaped by years as Helix's former head of compliance. She had resigned 2 years earlier, quietly. "I warned them," Sarah said now, voice steady but tired. "About Laura, about the risk, about the cover-up." Claire signed as she spoke, her movements precise but tense. "Why didn't you go public?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "Because I was threatened, and because I was afraid I'd lose the only leverage I had left." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were internal emails, redacted reports, a chain of approvals that stopped just short of names Claire recognized too well. Claire closed her eyes briefly. Outside, a man in a dark jacket lingered near the building entrance, pretending to scroll on his phone. Security cameras would see nothing unusual. That night, Claire sent Jack a single message. "They know you're looking. Be careful." Jack replied seconds later, "I already am." Rex lifted his head as Jack set the phone down. He moved closer to Emily's bedroom door, settling there without command. Guarding. Jack sat in the dark, laptop closed, listening to the quiet breathing of his daughter behind the wall. The threat had shifted. It was no longer careless men in coffee shops. It was organized, intentional. And someone had underestimated one thing. They had forgotten what a SEAL looked like when he stopped avoiding the fight. Truth bloomed in spring. The archive room at Helix was colder than the rest of the building, not by temperature, but by feeling. Jack Miller stood in front of a terminal that hadn't been logged into for years. The fluorescent lights above flickered faintly, casting pale reflections across rows of inactive servers. This was where data went when companies wanted to remember without being reminded. Claire Donovan stood a few steps behind him. She had removed her blazer, sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows. Without the armor of tailored clothing, she looked younger, still tall and slender, but less distant. Her brown hair had slipped loose from its knot, soft strands framing her face. Her skin was pale under the harsh light, almost translucent. The small hearing aid remained in place, though she no longer pretended it wasn't there. Jack's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He had followed a pattern Laura once described to him over dinner, back when life still allowed casual conversations. Logs that didn't align, timestamps that reset too cleanly, data that vanished but left shadows behind. He entered one last command. The screen blinked, then the file appeared. L. Miller, final review, do not delete. Jack stopped breathing. The video opened without sound. Laura Miller appeared on the screen, seated at her desk. She wore the same navy sweater Jack remembered from the morning she died. Her auburn hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands escaping around her face. She looked seared, determined, alive. Jack's hands curled into fists. Laura spoke, lips moving with calm urgency, though Jack couldn't hear her voice. He didn't need to. He knew it. She pointed to diagrams, code overlays, simulations replaying behind her. The failure condition repeated again and again. Wet pavement, sun glare, a delayed braking response measured in fractions of a second. She leaned closer to the camera. "If this file is being watched," she said, "then they ignored me, or silenced me." Jack felt something break open in his chest. Behind him, Claire lowered herself into a chair. Slowly, deliberately, she reached up and removed her hearing aid. The room fell into complete silence. For the first time since she was 10 years old, Claire chose not to listen to the world as it demanded. She watched Laura's hands, her face, her eyes. She read truth not through sound, but through intention. When the video ended, no one spoke. Claire stood, her movements unsteady. Her face had lost its careful neutrality. There was anger there now, and grief, and something like shame. "My father approved this system," she signed, hands trembling slightly. "The board pushed for launch, profits, timelines." Jack nodded once. "I know," he signed back. "Laura told me who would fight her." Claire looked at the dark screen. "I won't bury this," she signed, "even if it costs me everything." The fallout was not immediate. It was surgical. Claire handed copies of the file to Sarah Langford, who moved with quiet efficiency. Sarah had the posture of a woman who had spent her life standing straight in rooms full of men who underestimated her. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back tight now, her blue eyes sharp with purpose. She contacted regulators, journalists she trusted, investigators who still remembered why they'd chosen their careers. Within a week, Helix contracts were suspended pending review. Within 10 days, the former head of autonomous systems was placed under federal investigation. The gray sedan stopped appearing outside Jack's apartment. The man from the grocery store never returned. One afternoon, Jack walked Emily home from school, beneath budding trees just beginning to show green. Rex paced beside them, steady as ever. A man stepped too close on the sidewalk, bumping Jack's shoulder hard enough to test reaction. Jack didn't turn. Rex did. The shepherd shifted his stance, body angling protectively in front of Emily. His eyes locked onto the man's, unblinking. Not aggression, certainty. The man muttered an apology and hurried away. Jack exhaled slowly. He didn't need to fight. He only needed to be unmistakable. At Helix, the board called an emergency session. Claire entered the room without her hearing aid. She wore a simple blouse and dark slacks, nothing to signal authority except the way she carried herself. She signed while an interpreter spoke for her, each word translated with precision. "This company was built on innovation," she signed. "But innovation without ethics is just another weapon." The room shifted. Some faces hardened. Others looked away. She continued, "We will release the data, all of it. We will cooperate fully with every investigation. And if you remove me for this, I will leave knowing I chose people over silence." Jack watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, posture relaxed but alert. Rex lay at his feet, still as stone. The vote was delayed. Fear had entered the room. Spring moved forward regardless. The snow fully melted. Grass returned. Windows opened. One evening, Jack sat on his apartment balcony while Emily colored beside him. Rex rested with his head on Jack's boot, eyes half-lidded but aware. Claire called. "They're pushing back," she signed through the screen. "But they can't erase this anymore." Jack nodded. "Truth doesn't need permission," he signed. Claire smiled. Not the careful one, the real one. In the quiet after the call, Jack looked out over the city. He thought of Laura, of the years lost, of the patience he'd learned in the teams, waiting for the right moment to act. Spring had taught him something new. Some battles weren't won with force. They bloomed instead. The spring of those who learned to listen. Spring settled into Missoula the way healing often did, quietly, without asking permission. The Helix building no longer felt sealed off from the world. Windows were open now, not just the glass, but the conversations inside. The company had been dismantled and rebuilt piece by piece, its old defenses stripped away. Lawyers still walked the halls, but so did ethicists, engineers, and people whose job titles hadn't existed a year ago. Claire Donovan walked through the lobby without her hearing aid. She was still tall and slender, her posture straight, but there was less tension in her shoulders. Her brown hair was worn loose now, falling past her collarbone. Her skin, once pale under artificial lights, carried color from time outdoors. She dressed simply, neutral tones, no armor. People noticed. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, a few relieved. Claire did not rush them. She had learned that silence did not mean absence. It meant space. The Laura Initiative was announced that morning, a permanent division dedicated to technology ethics, whistleblower protection, and transparent accountability, named not after a brand, but after a woman who had been ignored. Claire signed as she spoke. An interpreter stood beside her, voicing each sentence for those who needed sound. She did not apologize for signing. She did not explain herself. "I was taught that power speaks loudest," she signed. "I've learned that listening changes more." The room was still. Outside Helix, Jack Miller watched the live feed on his phone. He stood across the street, hands in his coat pockets, weight shifted slightly off his left knee. He looked the same as he always had. Broad shoulders, weathered face, beard trimmed short, eyes steady. But something in him had loosened. Rex lay at his feet, front paws crossed, harness on. The shepherd's ears tracked movement automatically. A man passed too close. Rex lifted his head. The man noticed, adjusted his path. Threat neutralized without a sound. Jack turned off the phone and headed toward the building. He didn't go inside. He didn't need to. Across town, in a renovated brick warehouse near the river, Jack's new training center opened its doors. There was no sign out front, no logo, just a small plaque by the door. Safety and awareness sent terror inside. The space smelled of clean wood and coffee. Sunlight poured through high windows. Mats covered the floor. A whiteboard stood against one wall. A rack of leashes hung neatly beside the entrance. Rex took his position at the threshold, always there, always watching. The people who came were quiet, veterans with families, single parents, a few children who had learned too early that the world didn't always protect them. Jack didn't teach combat. He taught awareness, boundaries, how to read a room, when to leave, when to stand still. He taught that strength didn't announce itself. That afternoon, a man lingered outside the center longer than necessary. Mid-40s, heavy build, baseball cap pulled low. He leaned against his truck, watching through the glass. Jack noticed. Rex noticed sooner. The shepherd stood, body squared, eyes fixed. Not aggressive, not friendly, clear. The man held Rex's gaze for 3 seconds. Then he left. Jack said nothing. Emily helped him close up that evening. She was 9 now, taller, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her confidence had grown in ways Jack hadn't expected. She signed constantly, hands quick and expressive, sometimes faster than Jack could follow. She paused by Rex and knelt, resting her forehead briefly against his. "Good job," she signed. Rex's tail thumped once. Later that week, the old coffee shop reopened. Same brick walls, same creaky floorboards, but different energy. The staff had learned basic sign language. The menu included visual icons and written descriptions. Quiet hours were posted clearly. Jack sat by the window with Emily. Rex lay beside him, chin on his paws, eyes on the street. Claire entered alone. She wore a light red dress this time, not the sharp red of authority. Something softer. Her hair moved freely. No hearing aid, no entourage. She approached the counter and signed. "Oat milk latte." The barista smiled and signed back, careful but confident. Claire turned and saw them. She hesitated. Emily didn't. The girl hopped down from her chair and ran to Claire, hugging her tightly. Claire knelt without hesitation, returning the embrace with both arms. "I'm not scared anymore," Emily signed, her face bright. Claire swallowed hard and nodded. Jack joined them, placing a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. He met Claire's eyes. No words were necessary. Rex shifted slightly, adjusting his position so he could see everyone. Outside, a pair of young men walked past the window. One glanced in, laughed, and nudged his friend. Rex lifted his head. The laughter stopped. They kept walking. Inside, the coffee steamed. Sunlight warmed the table. The world moved on, loud and careless as ever. But here, there was space. Not peace that erased the past. Peace that made room for living with it. Jack watched Emily sign animatedly as Claire followed along, smiling. He rested his hand on Rex's harness, feeling the steady rise and fall of the dog's breath. Spring didn't undo loss. It didn't forgive injustice. But it offered something quieter, a beginning that didn't need to shout to be real. Some people wait their whole lives for a miracle to arrive with thunder and light. But more often, God works in quieter ways. He places strength inside a tired father who refuses to become bitter. He places courage inside a child who learns to trust again. He places protection in the steady presence of a loyal companion who stands watch without a word. This story is not about revenge. It is about justice guided by restraint. It is about truth that survives silence. And it is about how God can turn loss into purpose, not all at once, but step by step. In our daily lives, we may not face boardrooms or shadows on the street, but we all face moments when it would be easier to look away, easier to stay quiet, easier to believe that what we do does not matter. Yet every time we choose to protect the vulnerable, every time we listen instead of mocking, every time we stand firm without hatred, we become part of something larger than ourselves. That is where grace lives. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment telling us where you are watching from or who you are praying for. And subscribe to the channel so more stories of courage, justice, and quiet faith can reach the people who need them most. May God watch over you and your family. May He give you wisdom when the world is loud, strength when the road is hard, and peace that does not erase pain, but helps you carry it. And may we all remember this truth. Even in silence, love speaks loudest.